We would like to say thank you to Fiberglass Warehouse for being the sponsor of today's episode. Available online and shipping anywhere in the U.S., they have all the materials you need for whatever you're working on. Check them out today at fiberglasswarehouse.com. Welcome to Boats and Pros, the podcast where we tackle all things boats and fiberglass repair. Whether you're a seasoned pro or a weekend warrior, we've got the tips to keep your boat in tip-top shape. Let's get into it. All right, everybody, welcome to Boats and Pros. This is Nick Ireson.
This is John Economy.
And today we have a special guest, a good friend of mine, Logan Sizemore, who is a gel coat expert. And he is going to tell us all kinds of things about his craft and his experiences and how we got where we are today. Hey, Logan, how are you?
Doing good. How are you doing?
Very good. Thank you for joining us today and working through our technical issues with us here.
It was fun.
Turns out Logan's a tech guy as well, not just gel coat. So, tell us a little bit about your boating experiences in your youth. I guess let's start in the beginning.
Okay. When I was a kid, I liked to fish. My dad had a house on the, not a house, a trailer, a trailer on the lake. And then my mom got married to my stepdad, and he had a bass boat and had a pontoon boat, jet ski. And that's kind of how, like, the very first experiences with boats was with my stepdad and him marrying my mom and stuff like that. So it was fast.
It was around you and family. Yeah. Okay. Nice. And so how did you get started on working on them?
Okay. So here's where I said I had a funny story. But anyway, so I was actually working at Captain D's, and they were going to like put me in management training, and their plan was like to make me drive all over the place and stuff like that. So I decided.
What is Captain D's?
It's the seafood, the fast food seafood, like
Yep.
Long John Silver's.
Yeah.
Captain D's. Yeah.
Okay.
And so they were like wanting me to be a manager, and then they were going to ship me all over to like wherever they wanted to put me. And I was going to have to like drive an hour to work. And I'm like 19-year-old kid at the time and couldn't even afford the gas to drive where they was wanting to send me. And I just called them up and quit. And so I heard this boy tell me, he was like, "Have you ever heard of a temp service?" And I was like, "No, what's that?" He's like, "Well, you go in there, you take a drug test, you fill out an application, and then they'll place you somewhere for work." And he said, "I heard Mastercraft is hiring." And I'm like, "Excuse me." I'm like, "What is that?" And he's like, "It's a boat place." And so I went there and started at Mastercraft through the temp service. And then he didn't get the job at Mastercraft.
You went on without
We went together, and he didn't get the job. And I did.
That's
I don't know how I got the job, but.
Did you have to go interview at Mastercraft for it? Or you just gave your like experience to the work service or something? Or
They just told me to show up out there.
Okay.
So there was no interview. It was a temp to hire position. So if you do good, you work hard, then they would hire you after 90 days or something like that.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of the time those places are like, we'll take anyone and give them a try.
Yeah. And it's a good way to filter out good employees or bad employees or
Oh, yeah.
anything like that. So
Once you get down in the weeds on some glass work, that'll separate the men from the boys
Yeah.
real quick.
yeah, actually I started in rigging.
Okay.
And so I was like cutting holes, installing speakers, rod holders, really on those hydrosport boats,
Mm-hmm.
on the big boats. And there's this guy in there, and he was like, "Man, if you want to make the big money, you need to come start patching with us." And I was like, "What's that?" And he's like, "Oh, we're doing all the sprays and body work." And I'd see him out there putting sprays on, and I was like, "Yeah, man, I'd like to do that." And so somehow they got me over there.
So when you say patching, this is something that I really realized more when I got here, which I didn't realize there was as much boat production around here as there is. But people tend to think that a boat comes out of the mold and it's ready to be assembled, and it's very much not the case on a regular basis. There's patches and blends and imperfections that need to be repaired.
Yeah. Every boat. I get people, and they're like complaining. They're like, "I paid $100,000 for this bass boat, and it's got all these little imperfections." And I'm like, "Dude, there's a $400,000 Mastercraft in here with worse imperfections than yours." So
Yeah, we did some work with a guy who worked at one of the big bass boat companies out in Texas, and he said every boat gets some type of respray. Every single boat.
Every boat, for sure.
And it's kind of mind blowing when you think about it. It just shows, because these are big money companies, and they can't get it down to the point where there's no resprays. You know, there's a certain point where you just have to accept it's part of the game, I guess.
Yeah, for sure, part of it, man.
But so let's see here. Yeah, so you're not really just your average gel coat guy. You kind of tackle the hard stuff here. As far as I'm concerned, at least, it's a bit of a mystery to me how it really all goes. But the flake gel coat is, I think we would say, the expert level in the gel coat world. How did you end up doing that?
At Mastercraft, they had, so first off, I worked at Mastercraft in a time where it wasn't like today. You know, you had to do your job, be good at it. You couldn't slack off, or if you couldn't do it, after a while they'd move you or they'd fire you.
Okay.
So you had to be good at it. And then they started offering, there's a bunch of guys in there that would like play dumb. They'd be like, I don't know how to do metal flake, or, you know, because they didn't want to do it. It was the extra work. So they started offering like $1 an hour extra on your pay. And I was like, I'm raising a family. I'm a young kid. And I'm like, I need that extra $1 an hour.
Sure. You're here anyway, right?
Yeah. And so really, the way I learned is from the guys there. There was a good group of guys. They were, I'm really thankful for them now, because they taught me. They didn't have to, you know.
Yeah. They gave you a lifetime of skill over the time you were there.
Yeah. And I got to take some from this guy, some from another guy, and make like a melting pot.
Your own recipe.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've always said that about talking to people about fiberglass work in general. Like, you always get one tidbit of something that's useful.
Yeah.
Usually. So yeah, tell us about a good one. Tell us about like a really challenging one that you've worked on. We just did one. It was awful. It was horrible. We had to spray the whole bottom of this Mastercraft, and it was like a dark gray color, like a charcoal gray. And then in the front, it come up to flake on both sides and flake on top. So it was like essentially, it's 3 colors, but like 4 color type spray in the front. And then on the back, same thing. And it was just a nightmare. It was, to be honest with you, the damage went through all the colors.
Yeah, it was cracked all over this whole thing. It was like it might be the most expensive one we did for Mastercraft.
I saw that one. All the damage all the way up the starboard side.
Yeah.
Just after the helm, or in front of the helm.
Yeah.
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 That was a good one.
It was rough. So I was like, we were staying late nights, and it was affecting me emotionally, to be honest with you. It's one of them ones where you're like, man, I cannot wait till this thing is gone. And when you're done with it, it's like almost impossible to feel good about it, because it was just so bad.
I got to the point. Every time you get sick of a boat, John, what do I tell you?
Then it's almost done with it.
No, okay. I was hoping you were going to say it doesn't matter if you're sick of this one, because you're going to be sick of the next one as soon as it gets here anyway. But yeah, same deal. I put you on the spot there. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things, especially with the big jobs, where once you're really into the thick of it, you're ready for them to go home.
Yep. Oh yeah.
But it feels good when they're done.
Yeah, it was awful, dude. And it was me and 2 other guys working on it. One guy's a new guy. You guys hadn't met yet, but he's
okay.
He's 19, and I got him through the temp service. So
can we come over and mess with him one day?
Yeah,
Act like we're a mad customer.
Yeah,
like,
you could,
and we'll time it when it's him there.
Yeah, you could if you wanted to.
That could be fun.
He wouldn't. I don't know if he'd be able to talk. If you guys come in like that, he'd be. He's got a little bit of body shop experience, but on the bottom of that boat, I just threw him to the wolves. Like, here, you buff behind us, and so he's like, the first thing he's buffing on a boat is the bottom.
Oh man, was he laying on a creeper?
No, we were sitting in chairs. We had high enough to roll in chairs, but he was.
Yeah, you guys got the nice gantry.
I could see him like his stopping and grabbing the back of his neck and his shoulder. Yeah, I was like, yep.
Well, and that buffer will try to throw you around, and if you're the new guy at the shop, you do not want anyone to. You don't want to think that the buffer is winning, so you're extra tensed up and using a lot of extra energy just to try to give a good impression, I feel like.
Yeah. And I told him, I said, dude, don't think about what we're thinking. Don't worry about what we think of you. We've all been new buffing before, so just do your best. Here's what you look for. You see these DAs, make sure they're gone, and don't worry what it looks like.
How do you do?
How cool you look buffing. It doesn't. We all look like idiots leaving covered in compounds. So it doesn't matter.
Yeah, but you guys use that delicious Starburst smelling compound over there, that Polar Shine.
Yeah.
I want to just squirt that stuff
Really?
right into my mouth.
Oh man, you're crazy.
Skittles or something.
No, you're crazy, man.
So yeah, you're doing a lot of gel coat work. What is the most common kind of stuff that you're doing?
We're doing a lot of what we're doing is warranty work. I would say the most common thing that we get, like if it's like a repeatable thing that you see and you know you're going to see it every year, is like the damage on underwater gear on Supra, Moombas, Mastercrafts, stuff like that, where they have the props on the bottom and they got the shaft log, so people and boats are heavy and they kind of run deep and people destroy the props in the bottom of the boat. Sometimes they'll hit the prop and then the prop bangs up into the bottom of the boat and knocks a big chunk out.
I've seen some pictures like that.
Yeah, they'll hit the rudder and it'll like start spider crack from that. And that's like guaranteed every year. Probably 20 boats at least.
Wow. Do you have to get on the inside for that too, or can you do most of it from the outside?
No.
Probably case by case basis.
Well, no, we do most of it from the outside. A lot of these boats are like over an inch thick.
Glass. In that area especially.
Yeah, you can't even tell on the inside. Like they black gel the bilge area, and you look down in there and you can't see any cracks or anything. So most of it's done from the outside. You can technically, I mean, there's a lot you can do from one side and never have to do anything on the inside.
That's an area you could get away with adding some thickness and not really hurting anything, as long as you do it at the right shape and stuff.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. So mostly on the bottoms then. I've seen a lot of the times that I've been in your shop, you've got the boats kind of where the sides and the keel are closer to face height. So you're almost always pulling them off the trailer.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of those we do. There's one guy that helps us on the side. He prefers to lay on the ground for whatever reason, but
sneak in a nap here and there. Do it right.
I don't know. He's just got this thing about him. He wants the worst job in the worst position, and he's happy.
Hey, everybody needs one of those guys.
For whatever. I don't know why. I like it, though.
I've noticed that you guys are really good in there about putting plastic over anything that's not going to be worked on and saving yourself some time on the back end there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a big deal. So that's
one of those things that comes from experience of doing it or not doing it a couple times, and someone's wife gets lit up.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Some itchy bikini area.
Yeah. I'm like, man, if they get two of these with a lot of the warranty work, you kind of beat out a lot of competition, take people's business by keeping the boats clean.
Sure, I could see that.
It's like a simple thing that people
cost you very little money to actually do.
Yeah.
And it goes a long way. It saves you time.
Yeah.
Yeah. One thing that I think a lot of people don't realize out there about the boat dealer game, and maybe I have this wrong, so correct me if I'm wrong, but all these dealerships have their boats floor plan to them. So someone's financing them. They bring them in there. They get delivered by the dealer. And then they go through, and if they start finding air voids or small imperfections, and it's something that a customer is going to get hung up on, then they're forced to figure out how to take care of that so that they can sell the brand new boat, right?
Yep.
And so that's where someone like you comes in, because there's literally a brand new but imperfect, very expensive product sitting there, and it's not going anywhere until someone fixes it, but they're paying interest on that bad boy.
Yeah.
And it's depreciating every single day.
Yeah. Yeah, and they're actually some of the manufacturers give the dealership a timeline. So they're like, you've got 30 days to look the boat over. Send us a list, a warranty claim on everything you want fixed. Now they'll also honor like the customer warranty. But that's kind of like after it's sold deal, but the dealer, they've got 30 days, then the customer maybe has like a year on gel coat.
Yeah.
So I thought that was crazy. I found that out last year. I'm like, really? 30 days? I mean, what's the difference? But
well, and it only takes like one air void and just around a hatch rim or somewhere that's obvious, that's like it's the size of a dime, but it's going to stop that boat from selling because it's in a noticeable place where anyone's going to be like, I'm spending $120,000 on this.
Yeah,
that needs to not be there.
Yeah,
this is brand new. Or how much are we discounting?
Yeah. Oh, but yeah, then, sure. Like, yeah.
Do you really want to buy a brand new $120,000 boat and save yourself $600 and have to look at that? Probably not. If you're that guy shopping in that bracket,
right?
It's not even worth it to them. Just make it right.
Yeah, they get. And the people, to be honest with you, a lot of the people buying these boats are, they're not hurting for money. A lot of them, and they're wise with their money.
Yep.
So they make good decisions when they purchase, and they're trying to get every dollar they can back out of it, or make sure that the product is like 100% when they leave.
Of course, chances are if you've got enough money to be buying a $100,000+ toy, you are smart enough to negotiate and be able to, deal with an issue like that.
Yeah.
Now, there are the guys out there that'll take something like that and try to deal with it themselves. Do you see a lot of DIYers that you get involved with after the fact, or people looking for a little bit of help, but they don't really want to bring the boat to you?
Yeah. I see some. I would say, if I had to put like a percentage on there, I'd say it's like a 2 or 3% type of thing. 98% of people, they want somebody to do it that knows what they're doing, but then you've got the 2% or maybe even 1%. I don't know. But, and then they ask, and I try to give them as much guidance as I can. 'Cause maybe they can fix the little dime size spot or they can figure it out good enough for them. But
exactly, it's up to them to decide how less of a perfect repair they're willing to accept.
Yeah.
As a shop, you can't make that decision, so you have to shoot for perfection.
Right. And what it does too is, so you help them now, and it doesn't cost you any money. It costs you a little bit of time trying to guide them.
And you weren't going to get their money anyway.
Right. And then they take their boat and they go hit a rock. And now they've got a $15,000, $20,000 insurance job.
Yep.
And they're coming back to you because you were so helpful when you weren't making any money. So it's kind of one of them things, you set yourself up for the future. If somebody's wanting to work on something like that and they're noticing stuff like that, they'll have something else later on.
Yes.
More often than not.
Well, and I've always said, and you pretty much just led up to it pretty well right there, the best customer that you can have is a customer who's tried a little bit of fiberglass work before.
Yeah.
Because until you got those gloves on and your fingers are all stuck together and you got sweat in your eyes and you're just trying to figure out what you were even doing a minute ago, and now all of a sudden it's summertime and your resin's firing off and it's half done and you're grinding it back and dripping everywhere. And oh man, those are the guys who really appreciate you.
Yeah.
And you can tell when that guy walks in.
They're like, some people come in, they're like, I've done this before back in the 90s or early 2000s.
Yeah.
And they're like, I don't want no part of it. Will you fix this? And I'm like, yep, sure will.
So let's say that you got someone at home who might be on the fence about trying something themselves. Where do you see guys get off the rails, or where do you see it go wrong for some amateur DIYers?
So I see a lot of stuff where they're putting this, I think it's some type of Permatex.
Marine Tex.
Oh, God. Yeah. So they're putting the Marine Tex in there, and their assumption is they could just throw it in there. And they throw it in there, and it's rough, and then they bring it back, and we've got to grind that out. It's fine for little stuff.
Yeah.
But if you take a spot that's like a 5-inch by 3-inch spot and
smear it.
Yeah, and you fill it full, then it's like,
butter.
I'm not even sure. That stuff almost looks porous to me. Like
it does.
Like it can't be a long-term thing. And some people, I see people, they put tape over stuff, and then sometimes on the bottom of a hole, and they don't want to fix it because they think that the tape is okay.
Yeah.
And so they let it go forever. And by the time it gets to us, where they had a baseball size thing, it's now a beach ball size repair or something like that. So they do stuff like that. They put, I've got one guy, he's a great guy, and he likes his boat to look nice, but he will find the closest fingernail polish he can find and paint scratches and chips in on his boat
Fair enough. And so it gets to a certain point where he brings it to you and he's like, all right, just do it all up.
Yeah. And what's funny is what he's using is like so close sometimes. I'm like,
you're right. That's pretty good, dude. Leave it here.
I'm like, how do I know when I got all the fingernail polish out of this? I got to really grind all the way through it and make more of a repair than probably what it needed. So,
right. Yeah, fair enough. But in the meantime, you're over there at Ulta shopping for materials.
Yeah. Asking my wife to bring it on the way home, sending her pictures, saying, can you find this in nail polish over there?
I could just see it. She's in there with like a little fragment of gel coat.
No, some people, man, they're happy with that. They, and if they are, I mean, and it's not in a critical area underwater, and they're happy with having a red boat and taking a little bit of red fingernail polish on the side of the deck or something, and the scratch not looking like a big white scratch across the parking lot, and they're happy with that, more power to them.
Sure. Yeah, someone once told me that the definition of a good deal is when both parties are happy in the end, and I feel like the definition of a repair is whenever the owner is happy. Like it's repaired whenever the person who's paying for it thinks that's good enough for me. And, being the person making that decision on your own boat, it's a lot easier to be like, you know what? This just does not matter that much. I can't see it when I'm going 50 miles an hour on the lake. Let's just boop, 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 boop,
oh yeah,
and off we go.
Yeah. And two, I mean, so everybody that walks in is the boss. I found that out when you're running a company. The repair company, when you go like in Mastercraft, when I worked there, you got one boss or a couple supervisors, but everybody that walks in the door when you're running the company, they're technically your boss. And so when they're happy, you're done. And a lot of things factor into that: money, time, exactly what they want. So,
and it's funny too, because that really holds true, because kind of every time someone shows up with their boat, now the more established you are and the better your reputation, the easier it gets. But it's kind of like a little mini job interview every time, because especially if it's a nice, new, pricey boat, they're showing up, they're wanting to know that you're not about to make this worse.
Yeah.
Right? Because it can go bad. If you get someone, especially on flake, you might take a dime-sized piece of damage and turn it into a grapefruit or a beach ball or bigger, and the spray area just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger if you really want to get it right.
Yeah, for sure. And that's one thing. So on the flake, and just any repairs in general, but mostly on the flake, that's something I have to explain. So if you want to do a softball size repair, then a lot of times you're probably going to see it, unless the color, it depends on color, but and that's where, like, when they've got like an insurance job, I could tell them up front, and I'm like, hey, I tell them up front anyway, but especially if it's insurance, I'm like, hey, look, this is not going to match unless we spray the whole side. And so we could submit it to your insurance. And a lot of the insurances around right now are really receptive to that. They understand that whatever the EPA has done to this stuff, which I know there's something to do with the low VOC stuff or something that's went on, because everything used to match like 10 times better.
Oh, really?
Than it does now. Yeah.
When did that change?
I don't know when it changed exactly. I know when I first got into doing this, there was like a couple colors that didn't match. But the longer I've been in it, I've noticed, like, so if somebody's got like it doesn't really matter what color, but gray don't want to match on solid colors. Flake, these lighter blue color flakes are very hard to match without spraying a big section or a whole side. Black flake is great. You could almost spray a little clear on the boat and throw a handful at it, and wherever it sticks, spray over it. But
I would thought the black is the hardest.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Yeah, and silver's not the hardest. People think silver's the hardest.
Oh, I know why silver's not the hardest, because worst case scenario, you sand through the clear coat back into silver.
Yeah.
So for everyone out there who doesn't know this, when you spray flake, then you spray your clear coat over it, and then when you have to knock that clear coat back so that it's flat enough for you to buff it to a shine after you step through your grits, then if you're not careful and you go through the amount of clear coat that you applied, then you knock the pigment off of the flakes, and they turn from blue or red or black or whatever pretty color they are to silver. Yeah. And the more you sand, the more silver it gets. So what happens when you do a refinish job and you don't put enough clear coat on the first time is you end up with little bits of silver all over the place.
Yeah.
And it's horrible.
Yep. another thing they don't realize, so they'll bring a bass boat in, and it's a 2000 model bass boat. It doesn't matter who makes it. And it's got like, you can tell it's either been under a carport or, or sometimes no cover at all. But you could tell that the sun's like really ate up the back and the front. And in the middle of the boat, there's no silver in the flake, but at the back and the front, there's silver. So there'll be red flake and it'll be silver all in it. And they don't realize, and then they come in, they're asking, can you re-clear this? So this is like a big deal in the boat industry. They're like, can you re-clear this? And I'm like, well, we can. So
you wouldn't want
how much like it? How much do you want to spend on this boat that looks like it's worth $10,000? Do you want to put 15 or 20 into it? Or is there another option you would want to look at? Because,
well, it's funny because not everyone, but a lot of the time people seem to think that the cost of the repair should be proportional to the value of their boat.
Right.
And yeah, I've had people bring me like deck boats where it needs a transom, and I'm like, this is totaled.
Yeah.
To repair this boat, if you love this boat, I will fix it for you.
Yeah.
But just know that it's not good financial advice to do it.
Yeah.
But if you know that and you want to do it, I'll send it.
Yeah. And that's the thing. So they'll bring these boats in, and then they'll ask too. Sometimes they'll be like, and they're thinking cars is what they're thinking.
Okay.
They're like, can you re-clear this? And I'm like, well, it's not like a car. So I have to explain it to them,
and even in cars, that's a small percentage of time that you can get away with that and have it really look good.
Right. And so sometimes they'll be like, well, can you use automotive clear on there? And I'm like, oh, I can do anything you want me to do.
Yep.
But I cannot guarantee it.
Yep.
And so I just had a guy the other week, actually, he brought his boat over. Another repair facility, that's what they're doing. That's what their whole deal is they're like auto clearing boats. No names for sure. But anyway, and this guy's
is that someone I would be familiar with?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Okay.
They're kind of a little ways away from here.
Okay.
So, but anyway, so this guy, his whole boat was sprayed with car clear. And then so it's like in December, and he's at my shop in January asking me about it. And I'm like, man, your boat's totaled. It's like the entire boat he sprayed.
Because they had put clear all over it.
Automotive clear on the bass boat. And it was foggy looking in areas. He oversprayed everything.
Solvent pop or something? Maybe?
Something, maybe. And then there were spots where he took a line, he made it black. And the way he made it black was with a Sharpie, and then auto cleared over the Sharpie. So you could see the purple hue in the Sharpie, and it was just, and this guy, and I was like, man, I'm so sorry.
So sorry you made this terrible decision.
Yeah, I'm like, man. And so I ended up doing like a estimate for him, and his insurance took care of him on it. Like they totaled it. Then he bought the boat back.
What?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, they totaled it. So so his boat was probably worth, if you bought it and it was like in tip top condition, I would say 28 to 30,000. Without electronics or anything, it'd be less than that. It'd be a $20,000 boat with no electronics, motor, boat, trailer, $20,000. He had a nice trolling motor, nice graphs. They gave him like 35, and then they let him buy it back.
They had no business totaling that boat for him, in my opinion.
Well, I mean, they can. It's crazy.
It's good for him that they did, but every time I've worked with insurance, they want to know where the point of impact was, or they want to see a specific event.
Yeah.
Well, I guess, though, now that I'm thinking about it, the specific event that they're looking for is usually you admitting the stupid thing you did.
Yeah.
So I guess in his case, if the stupid thing he did was pay someone to put car paint on his boat.
Yeah.
But
he didn't know.
Well,
he didn't know he was paying for car paint. Yeah. Okay. So he got, and then
so does that mean his insurance company is trying to sue that guy?
I would say so. I mean, that's what I told him. I said, look, because the insurance company, the first thing, and this is some little under the radar knowledge.
Baseball?
Yeah, this is good for people to know, really. So they closed the case because they paid out the money for his boat to get fixed the first time. So when they do that, when they've paid out, they close it, And a lot of times what you'll talk to them, they'll say, well, we've already closed that case. So we're already done. We paid out. We're done with that. So I told this guy, I said, look, what you need to do is you need to tell them you need to file a new claim. This is not the same thing that you filed before. You've took your boat to this guy. He's ruined it. And he tried to ask the guy to work it out with the repair place and get his insurance information, talk to the guy's insurance, do it that way. The guy wasn't having it. He didn't want to, I guess, admit fault on it or whatever, or his insurance to go up. So I said, go back to your insurance, open a new claim. So if something like that happens, if more stuff comes up when you're fixing a boat or on the customer, if more stuff, because sometimes you get into one and you don't know everything until, especially if it's on the bottom, you lift the boat up and the trailer bunks was covering $5,000 worth of damage or whatever. If they won't do a supplement, then you can be like, hey, I need to file a new claim. So it's a whole separate deal. And that means they have to get back to work on it and get investigating. So I think the way that this guy was done was wrong. I think if it was our shop, I would have been like, hey, man, what can we do to make this right?
Sure. Well, yeah, but the guy who's spraying automotive clear is not the guy with that kind of customer service mentality.
Right.
But it would be very interesting to have been a fly on the wall on the conversation that happened between those two, because I bet you it was left in a gray area. You want it fixed? You want it to be shiny? I can do that.
Yep. Yeah.
The guy probably didn't say, are you going to use clear gel coat?
Yeah.
And the other guy obviously didn't say, I'm going to use clear gel coat. So if you leave it kind of in gray area, I guess that might be, and you're getting a smoking good deal that might be
that's the thing.
Too good to be true.
Yep, it was.
Yeah.
It was like $3,900.
So the guy come on, he's at least at fault for being a nickel dick.
Yeah. Yeah, see, these people that own boats and stuff, you got to remember that they're not well educated in what's going on. They don't know the difference between clear gel coat and clear automotive paint. They just know clear, and a lot of times they think, I've so many times I've been sanding a big metal flake spray, and they come in and they're like, so what do you got to do? Put clear over this? And I'm like, no, the clear's there. I'm just sanding it. So they don't realize that all the UV protection, the wax, everything is in that clear gel coat, and you just buff it after you're sanding. So
yeah. Well, and a lot of times these people, I guess it's like a lot of other things, but they basically have to pick someone who they feel that they can trust and then blindly trust what they're told and hope for the best, right? It's kind of like hiring a lawyer or any of these other things.
Yeah. There's a part of it where they buy you. There is. So
of course, that's mostly what they're buying, because you got to be confident that you're going to stand behind it after the fact.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what I try to be honest with people up front, because I think if they realize they're getting someone that's going to be honest, even if you don't give them the answers that they want to hear, not everybody wants to hear, man, to really fix this right, we're going to have to spray the whole side of your boat and it's going to cost X amount of dollars compared to the $800 they had in their mind or whatever.
Yep.
People don't want to hear that, but it's the truth.
And they need to hear it to be prepared for the conversations that are going to follow that.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Because once you get into that, well, okay, so it's $10,000 to respray the side or whatever. Well, where does $1,500 get me? When you start getting into that conversation, that's where you get into what I call the evil Knievel stuff, that you're paying for the attempt, you're not paying for the success. But if you want to hit her with some clear coat, and I've told you I don't think it's a good idea, and you still want to pay me to blast the side, and you clearly understand that I don't think it's going to work, we'll happily do it.
No warranty.
Yeah, absolutely. No taillight warranty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. So this is a really kind of a loaded question that it would be crazy to expect you to really be able to go into great detail to explain this. But can you walk us through like the very basics of flake repair?
Typical repair process. Yes. So for the flake, so for the solid colors, if people don't know, solid color gel is like a single stage paint, more or less. It's not the same material.
Right.
Yeah, but the process is kind of the same, except for with gel coat, just in general. If they're familiar with car paint, the first thing I tell them is when you spray this, you want to spray like primer, but thicker. So then that really gives them like a baseline to go off of, because on a car, for whatever reason, people have more knowledge about car paint than they do
Sure.
about gel coat.
Everyone's got an uncle who used to paint stuff in their garage or something.
Yeah. So they've seen that or something. So with the solid colors, it's one. Well, it's not one, but it's a thick coat. You sand it all down. With the flake, so there's kind of a few schools of thoughts on it. So the way that I do it is I will prep my area. It's got to be 220. Some people will prep like solid color stuff. They'll do 400. I just do 220 everything because I've talked to a lot of gel coat manufacturers.
Will you bring your 220 into your blend area, into areas where you'll have to step through that 220 grit and bring it back to a polish later?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So 220 all the way. You don't need to step out to 400, then up to 600 or anything like that. Just 220 all the way. For whatever reason, I find that it blends better even doing that. You would think that the finer you go, the better blend, which is...
Well, no, I could actually see that logic, because if you give it a deeper amount to bite into, then you can transition it more smoothly when you... Okay, I like that.
Yeah, and I've actually I've heard people 80 gritting the edge of their sprays, and I used to hear it about color matching solid color gels, but
wow. Well, like just a little bit on the fingertips, just around the perimeter, like right where you're going to...
Maybe like the last 6 inches of where your spray is going to stop, and stop your spray in the 80. The only thing is...
So some of the 80 is going to get polished.
Well, you'll have to sand it back down, but you'll have that edge where you're spraying into the 80 grit.
Yeah, so some of the 80 will get stepped through the grits and then polished. Yeah. Wow.
And they say that helps color match, but the 80 grit scratches are so rough to get out that I don't see the benefit. And I didn't see enough of the color match to do it all the time, because it's like you're sanding, trying to get the 80 out.
So I might play with that one day just as something to test.
Yeah. The first color I remember somebody telling me on was on red, like a bright fire red or apple red or something like that. But so 220 the area that we're going to do the metal flake on. We're assuming it's all one color. Say there's no other colors button up to it.
Which is a whole nother thing that we are going to touch on.
Yeah. So assuming there's no other colors. So, and then we're going to take and mix our metal flake into our clear gel coat. So, the ratio on that is, there's not very many ratios in the gel coat world. So people try to say 50-50, 90-10 percentage wise of how much flake to put in clear, or they don't even, I've never heard anybody give me a percentage on that, but I'm just saying as an example. What I do is I mix it in until it's thick enough that when I stick my paint mixing stick down in the metal flake mixture and I pull it up and turn it horizontal, that the top edge of the stick is not showing through at all.
So you're talking about taking clear gel coat and then adding your dry flake from a bag and mixing it in. And you're saying that this is how you determine how much of that dry flake you need to add to your clear to make your flake base layer.
Yes.
Okay. So now your flake base layer, that's being sprayed over raw fiberglass?
No. Well, it just depends on what you got. So if you're just fixing a defect in the flake, a lot of what I've been fixing is like cloudy clear coat. So a lot of times I'm just spraying over.
And that would be where it was maybe applied a little too thick in the mold?
Yes. What I say about that on the cloudy clear, it's always too thick, too fast, or too much too fast. So it don't have to be too thick in general. It could be just too much on their first pass.
Yep.
So too much too fast makes cloudy clear, however you look at it.
Because it just doesn't get a chance to gas off before it gets topped up over.
Right.
Yep. Okay.
So then after I've got my mixture of the flake and the gel coat, and this is really hard to convey over a soundbite for people, and even teaching somebody in person, it's a time skill. So it's time and time again you do it.
Well,
you learn more and more.
I think that for everyone out there who's listening to this, who might be visualizing some metallic automotive paint, you are wrong. You need to be thinking more about like metallic, something in between maple syrup and yogurt.
Yeah.
Like it's thick.
It's thick, yeah.
Yeah.
So
thicker than maple syrup for sure.
Very thick. And the flakes are a lot bigger than on metallic car paint.
Yeah, they go in
thousandths
of an inch, usually like 0.013 or something would be a big one.
0.025.
Ooh, wow.
Would be a big one. Yeah,
that's like the circuit for the carnival rides.
Yeah, it's like old school back in the day, what everybody was using.
It does look sick though.
Yeah,
still, I think.
Yeah, it's a show out in the sun for sure. Now mostly everybody's using 0.008.
Yeah, that's the fine.
Yeah, 0.008 of an inch is how big the flakes are. So, I've got my flake mixture, and I am spraying the area that I need to spray. When I spray it, so depending on the color, but a lot of colors, I'm using no fan on the spray gun. So
you've got to dial down what I would call laser beam.
Yeah. And because when you put that flake in there and you start spraying it, that laser beam turns into a softball.
Okay.
Or bigger sometimes.
And what gun are you spraying with? What size tip?
I'm using a 1.8 size tip for the flake.
And would you use that if you had to respray the whole side of a boat? You would still use that same size tip?
Yeah.
Okay.
I've sprayed tons of boats all the way around. Same size tip. It's all about that, like I said, with that too much, too fast deal.
Yeah.
So just because you can get a 2.4 pressure pot and spray flake and clear doesn't mean you should. So, because the too much, too fast deal. Sometimes you have no choice, like in the mold. That's different. So we're in the repair process. I can take essentially as long as I want to take. So I spray my area that I need to spray. I would say with that circle pattern that I'm spraying, I'm doing like the 50-50 overlap top to bottom, spraying it.
And now you're keeping a pretty good distance, right? So you're not making like streaky lines when you're spraying it.
Yeah, for the most part.
Or no, you're not stepping back like you would with an automotive gun.
I'm not stepping back very far, but I'm laying it to it. And it's like, so if anybody, I don't know how to get into the thing of explaining mills.
Think about like really thick plastic sheeting that you get at Lowe's is like 7 mils, I think, which would be about equivalent to what an automotive paint should be applied at.
Right. So I'm putting on the flake, I'm putting as much as it takes to cover. It doesn't really matter on the mills to me, but
I think it's around 20 for gel.
If for the flake part, I mean, maybe my passes are 5 mils a piece, and it may take 3 or 4 passes. So, and that puts you at that 15 to 20. Okay. So I'm spraying my area. If I'm stopping the flake and I'm trying to do a blend job, I will make sure that no little tiny amount of overspray gets on any tape that's going to be at the end of my spray, because that tape line will show up. No matter how insignificant the amount of flake overspray it is, it will show up.
Okay. So you're talking about if you're patching a big panel of flake and you're not respraying the whole panel, you're spotting a piece in.
Yes.
Yeah. And so if you get anywhere near that tape line, then you're going to see a hard line in the difference of the flakes, the way they lay.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So does that mean that you have to have your tape and your plastic pulled way back, or are you rolling the edges of the tape back, or a little bit of both?
Not rolling the tape. I never roll tape. I'm pulling it back. So, and I'm prepping it too. So I want to prep 2 feet or more past where I'm going to stop my flake spray to give like the area to clear over that flake.
So you're going to clear 2 more feet after you're stopping spraying your flake.
Yeah, at least. And then it varies. If I'm doing like something little, I can get away with less than that, but that's like it's a safe bet to say, if anybody's trying it, give yourself a couple more feet.
Well, so this will be funny to hear your answer on this, because this is something that I struggled with big time when I did a respray on a deck. And I knew that if I had the hard line in the flake, it was going to show, like you just said.
Yeah.
So I pulled it way back, like you said. But what I ended up with was dry flakes around the perimeter. And then when I re-cleared my spots, even if I pulled my clear out, I guess I wasn't pulling it out far enough, because I would silver the flakes that were like standing on edge around the perimeter, where then the clear built up around them enough to kind of cover them, but not enough that they were exposed pretty quickly because they weren't laying down. Yeah. And so I had a halo of silver around my spray blend area. So what did I do wrong there?
Well, it's hard to say. without seeing it, but so the transition when blending the flake.
How do you stop having like a dusting of flakes around the edge?
Yeah, so where you stop is more of a direct stop. And then you can kind of, on certain colors, some colors you can't do any of this. You need to spray the whole panel.
Okay. But, what kind of colors would that be?
Definitely like the light blue.
Or like those seafoam teal-y?
Yeah.
Okay.
Those types of colors. Sometimes you could put just a clear spray on and you can see it. Like the different amount of clear there versus the rest of the boat.
Wow.
The light blues, some of the orangish colors, stuff like that. Real bright, vibrant colors, it seems to be like the issue.
Your eye picks it up more.
Yeah.
And so what is the safest colors? Black, obviously.
Black. I like
what
black.
About like those gunmetal type colors?
Gunmetal, it depends. So there's different gunmetals, so it just depends on who's making it. And
okay.
You find out quick when you're in the process.
Yeah, so let's go into that for a second. Let's say that I show up with my boat and I've got a flake boat. It's a, I don't know, 2019 or something. How are you going to just find the flake that matches my boat?
So if it's 2019, that's great because they're probably, assuming they're still making the boat, they're still selling them, and then you can go through dealers to get the flake.
To get like a code or to actually source the flake itself?
To actually get the flake.
Okay. So let's say it's a boat that's not dealer supported anymore.
If it's not dealer supported anymore, then it just depends. Well, it's hard to find.
Yeah.
It's hard to find. You can have it made, but the thing is if you have it made, the people that make it, they want to sell 10 pounds of it, which 10 pounds is like
a couple $100 probably.
Enough to do 2 whole boats.
Oh, yeah.
2 entire boats at least, maybe more.
Yeah, or glitter bomb your enemy.
Yeah, and it's like
nuclear,
and they're at $60 to $70 a pound. So that's like $700.
Okay,
in metal flake. There's a few companies online that if you've got an older boat, there's a place up north. It's Great Lakes Skipper. Mm-hmm. Online, they have like a inventory of older flake, discontinued stuff.
They kept buying people out and made a little library of it or something.
Yeah, I don't know how they got it, but you can get like 3 samples from them. They'll send it to you in an envelope, and you can kind of look online and try to check the samples once it gets in. Sometimes you can get lucky on like eBay or just searching, but that's a good question because there's a lot of times I have to tell the client, I have to be like, hey, look, they don't make this anymore. So I've got a color that's similar, and most of it is that size that we talked about.
Yeah.
It's the .025 on their older boat that they quit making or whatever. And then you've got the new, the same color, but different size. Yeah, 0.008. Yeah.
So then they have a choice of either you spot in with a slightly different flake or you reflake everything with the flake that you have currently available.
Right. And the option's up to them. And it sucks to do that to people because if you're in the repair business, you want everything you do to be perfect. So
sure.
So I've sprayed my panel. Should we go back there?
Yeah, please do. I'll take you so far off track.
I've sprayed my flake. And then I'm going to spray my clear. So here's the part that is changed a lot since I first got in. When I first started doing the flake sprays and stuff, you could put as much clear on something as you wanted to. Now you've got to kind of be a little bit more careful in the way that you do it. So I'm taking clear, and as a patch aid, which would be like a reducer, car paint, they use reducers, but a thinner, basically. But I'm taking instead of a patch aid, I'm using that Duratec high gloss additive.
Okay. And what kind of ratio? I know it goes by the seat pants. I know. It's roughly
the ratio. I would say
20%, maybe 5 to 1,
maybe 20%.
Okay.
They say you could do 50-50.
Yeah.
But when you have a $20,000 job, you don't want it to run off in the floor either. So
right.
So I would say roughly 20%. I'd say if you were going to err, I'd err on the less. I'd go the 15%, 10% route on that, putting that in there.
And you're using that partially as a reducer, but you're also using that as your curing additive. Is that right? Or are you still adding some patch aid or wax or something, or just purely the Duratec? I'm
spraying patch aid over top when I'm done.
Okay.
So just for the clear part, I'm mixing Duratec, and in a 600 ml cup, which is roughly 20 ounces, I'm doing, say, the 90-10, 80-20 mix. Clear would be the 80 and 90. Duratec would be the 10 and 20%. And the amount of hardener I'm putting in is like 4 cc's on our hardener bottle. So you have
how many ounces?
On 20 ounces. So it's
Okay.
very light on the hardener. It doesn't need it, man. It's
that
just,
Duratec sends it.
Well, it's not really the Duratec, I don't think. I think it's the clear. It's just so sensitive. So I'm doing less on the hardener. And there's 2 ways to kick gel coat, really. So it's thermal reaction, which is the catalyst, and it heats it up and it kicks it. But suffocating it also helps add to that. So when I go back, I've sprayed all my clear. I'm doing 3 good wet passes of clear, which is not automotive wet pass, because it's gel coat. So I'm doing
heavy. Let's
say 5 to 7 mil, maybe closer to the 7 mil passes.
To the point where if it was automotive clear, it would be on the floor.
For sure.
Yes, for sure.
Like maybe after first pass on the floor.
Yeah.
And then after.
So you're sorry, I cut you off. Your laser beam, as I would call it, on your fan pattern. What about trigger? Are you wide open on your throttle, so to speak?
Wide open, needle all the way back.
Yep.
Pressure, air pressure. I'm doing it by sound and feel.
I don't even put a gauge on the gun.
I mean, it's one of them things. If I gave you a pressure, I would say 27 PSIs or something like that.
7s make it sound like you mean it.
Yeah. 27 to 30. But it's a pretty high pressure, and it's putting out a lot of volume with the no fan.
And are you using an expensive gun?
No.
Cheap?
Yeah.
From my favorite place?
Well, it looks like whoever makes them for your favorite place makes these too.
Okay, from the other favorite place, the online favorite place.
Yeah. Well, so the gun that I've really been liking is a ATD 1.8 tip. And
visit my Amazon store.
Yeah, if you can scratch all the paint off it and the purple Harbor Freight special that you referenced.
Drop.
Yeah. If you could scratch all the paint off of them and set them side by side, it's the same people's got to be making it.
Sure. It's a 1.8 tip, not a 1.4.
Right. I took the popper valve, which, do you know what the popper valve is? I didn't know it was called this the other day. So the air valve that's behind the trigger.
Okay.
I took that out of the purple gun and put in my black gun because the 1.8 tip, because the purple gun's 1.4.
That's a ghost gun if you start mixing parts.
Yeah, mixing parts, man. But you could tell. You just tell they're made by the same
for sure
company in China, somewhere, Vietnam, wherever.
The same child makes them all, dude.
Yeah, yeah. Probably a 10-year-old.
Did they come bathed in grease or that yellow oil like the purple poppers?
I assume every gun comes bathed in oil and grease. Yeah. So, but the gun, I mean, I think they're like $70, $50 to $70, depending on where you get them. They're more expensive because they have a name that big supply chains use.
I see. But so you're not getting it on Amazon or something. You're buying it from like AIM or something.
But you could find it online. I'm sure. Yeah, you could find it online for sure. But they're not worth any more looking at or feeling than the Harbor Freight gun.
And how long do you like to get out of them before you give it a Viking funeral?
Oh, dude, I get over a year out of them.
Oh, do you really?
Yeah, long time. You get a long time out of them if you clean them good.
Oh yeah. Some of those purple poppers, for me, that's a one and done. Yeah. I'll walk past the trash can and drop it in on the way by and go straight to the fridge for a beer, and that's it.
Yeah. It's even the purple ones I clean, I can't help it. I'm like,
I like to get 2 or 3 uses out of it, in all seriousness. But if I get one good spray out of it, then I feel like it doesn't owe me anything after that. Yeah.
There's always this thing where the gun's messed up, and it's never my fault. I don't know if you feel like that or not.
It's always John's fault, of course.
It was never me.
All right, so I really took you through the woods a little bit there, but where we left off, you've got your 10% or so Duratec mix, you're spraying your clear, you're hosing it on 3 passes.
3 passes, it's probably closer to 7 mils.
Okay.
At least 5 mils. Then I'm taking a cup of Patch Aid. So this is not Duratec. If you do it with Duratec, it's like stays rubbery. I don't like it.
Okay.
So the Patch Aid I'm using is CR3000. It's a Ineos, which used to be called Ashland. So it's their Patch Aid.
Now, when you spray this patch aid on, you're committing to get every little bit of it off.
Yeah. Well, depends on what it looks like.
Okay.
So I monitor it as I'm sanding, buffing, and stuff. Most of the time you're sanding it all off, though, because the spray is so rough. Yeah, I mean, but it's like an extra little layer, and it suffocates it.
Okay.
So it makes it where when I'm done with the spray and I go to work it down, there's no acetoning. I'm not acetoning the spray first. I'm just straight starting to sand it. It's not sticky.
So now you've sprayed this. So now let's say that I just walked into your shop and you just got done dropping this clear coat over your flake.
Mm-hmm.
Does it look like a car? Like it's Gucci, it's shiny and slick and smooth and just looking beautiful?
It depends on how far away you're standing.
So it
is shiny.
When
it's
you did
slick looking.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's got a heavy orange peel.
It's got a texture. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
For sure. And then so when I spray the patch aid, I am mixing like, if I did a full cup of it, I'm taking like 12 cc's of hardener to it, straight patch aid. And now I'm opening the fan on my gun, like near as far open as it can go.
A mist coat.
Yeah. And I'm misting this thing.
What pass?
No, it's kind of, this is funny because I'm doing it till it has a certain look to it. Mm-hmm. So I'm looking at the texture before and the texture after the patch aid.
And you're using the patch aid to lay it out a little bit?
Yeah, it does lay it out some. So you can see it in the texture when you've got enough. I would say I'm putting like 3 mils of it on there.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So it's still, I mean, it's a little extra bit that kind of helps.
Sure.
And I've got my fan open and I'm running with the gun. I'm spraying it like it's car clear. So
a glamour coat, kind of.
Yeah. And then I'm done. And then I clean up. I get all that overspray out of my hair and off my legs and arms. I feel like I'm covered in hairspray.
Yeah. And how long will I need to kick for?
I'm always leaving it sit overnight at least.
Yeah. Okay.
So I'm just, most of the time when I spray that, it's such a big deal. I mean, it just like stinks so bad, so much overspray that I'm like, everybody else is left.
Yeah. It's an end of the day job.
Yeah. I'm starting at 5 and I'm getting done at 8.
Yep.
And everybody's gone. And so when I'm done, man,
and then it can kick overnight and you come in the morning and get back to it.
Yeah.
No wasted time.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, and then on that, that's pretty much the whole process. So you've got your flake, which is your clear and glitter mixture.
I called it glitter once and really upset someone.
Really? Did you?
Yeah. But it was someone who was very sensitive.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, if they get it all over their face and go home to their wife,
well, you've met them.
They're going to ask where the glitter comes from. I've met them. Ooh, I've got it. Okay.
Yeah. I was just saying, shouldn't
got
take
it,
you
dude.
long.
I've got it.
Okay. So really, that's it. So then, of course, you would step through the grits and polish it, right?
Yeah.
But what we haven't talked about here is the real secret sauce.
Yeah.
Which is, of course, butting colors up next to each other, multiple colors of flake, and then having your finished product not have all these obvious hard lines and steps and meeting points where your different colors intersect. So I don't want to say anyone can just spray a single color, but we didn't even really touch on the hard stuff until we get into multicolors, right?
Right. So the multicolor stuff is definitely a lot harder. It's there's a lot in the taping that is like a puzzle. So
that's a very good way to put it.
Yeah. You've got to think about it. And sometimes I've ended up feeling like an idiot, like sitting there, like, even though I've done this for so long, like this has been most of my whole career's been in this stuff. And I'm still sitting there like, which color should I spray first? Where should I put the tape?
Yep.
I've got a few tricks that help. They really help people with experience. But so say, let's do like flake on a solid color, where a solid color and flake meet. So if you're doing flake on the solid color, if you spray your flake, well, depending on the size, but if you say you're spraying your flake first, you spray your flake and your clear, same line.
All right, hang on, let me pause you.
Yeah.
Let's say this hypothetical situation, let's say that the damage that was repaired was right on the transition of the two colors.
Yeah.
Okay. So the fiberglass repair is done.
Yeah.
and you've got raw fiberglass. Where do you start?
Okay, so
after it's faired out, when you're ready to spray your gel coat, do you spray the solid color over where the flake is going to go to? So
no,
you have a backer for the flake?
No, I don't. I try not to do much backing colors on flake, so that's a good thing to talk about. So it's really popular to use a color as a backing color for flake, especially in the mold, which is almost like a need in the mold.
Yeah.
So what companies are doing nowadays is they're coming out with the same color of flake in a solid color. So say
that's interesting.
So they'll have a sapphire blue. Say, and I'm not talking about any company colors I know. I'm just making it up.
Yeah,
to be honest with you. So it's sapphire blue. So they'll have sapphire blue flake, and then they'll have sapphire blue in a solid color. In the mold, they back their sapphire flake with the sapphire solid color.
Makes a lot of sense.
It gives everybody, it makes it easy for the people there. When I'm doing it, depending on the situation, but there's no real way to make a good blend line if the backing color is showing through the flake before I start my repair.
So you would spray flake onto raw glass?
Oh, yeah, well, not raw glass. I mean, so no pits. Assuming there's no pits.
Yeah, like let's say that it's been faired and maybe it's a combination of glaze and a little bit of raw glass here and there. And what I would say would be ready for some type of primer coat. Will you go straight into flake onto that surface?
Yeah.
With little bits of glaze showing and different colorations?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. And one thing I'll do. So here's a technique, and this is the only place I will use this technique. So back in the day, we'll say back in the day because I think it should be in the past, but it's really not for a lot of people. But anyway, so people will blow flake on. Have you seen people dry blow flake? So what they'll do, they'll take like a piece of sandpaper, or they have dry guns that they can actually blow dry flake onto clear to cover up a defect. What I will do is if there's
on like a tiny little, you're talking about trying to slide by like a dime-sized piece?
Yeah. So like a little one, but I'll do it on a foot section.
Okay.
But the way I do it is I have my flake mixture and I spray it on there. And then if I got a bunch of that glass or you can call it Bondo instead of glaze, whatever you want to call it, glass and Bondo showing, if it's still showing through that flake and I'm getting to where I'm putting quite a bit of material on there and I've got to worry about runs and sags in the flake, then I will dry blow it on there to cover it and then blend that out with my flake mixture that I'm spraying.
And we're talking about like Tinkerbell, handful of pixie dust.
Yeah, like it's all over your face when you get home. It's awesome.
And you'll do that in just the select spots where you can see that you don't have coverage.
Right. Yeah. And then I'll blend it out with the spray gun and so I'm doing it. I've got it all there right there. It's coming back 5 minutes later.
You lay back over it with a coat after you do that.
Yeah. Okay. And then I can blend it out from there some. So I try not to use the backing color. If it's extreme, like say they're changing colors. So I did one a couple years ago where they were changing from like a dark brown flake and they wanted orange flake. So it's like a big contrast. I sprayed orange solid color first. And then that's about the only time I really use the backing color.
Okay. So let's go back to the example then where we've got a baseball size repair right on the transition between the two colors. Because I kind of cut you off. I was looking for clarity, but go ahead.
Okay. So if you spray your flake first, you can break your flake and your clear on the same line. The only thing that the only issue with that is fighting time because you want to pull your flake line and your clear line while they're wet. Because
so
if
you
that
don't get those dog legs.
Yeah. It starts kicking on you and you're pulling parts of the spray off with your tape and stuff like that, then you're in trouble.
You're back to square one pretty much, right?
So there's a way, and this is so hard to explain, but if you've got a bigger one and you're doing, sometimes I'll do the solid color first, and then I'll come back and
with a hard line.
With a hard line. Then I'll come back on that hard line and put my fine line tape for my flake, almost like it kind of rolls off in that hard line. I want it like on that roll.
Right on the edge of the radius where the material naturally just kind of lays down a little bit.
Yeah, and then I'll break my clear like half an inch over the color. So my flake will be right on the line, but I'll overlap
And then when you sand it, you get that slight roll coming into it because you knock it flat right at the top. Okay.
Yeah. So that's if you're doing something big.
So your preference is which? Flake first or solid first?
My preference, I would love to do flake first, but it's just not practical if it's a huge repair. If it's like the whole side of a boat, you can't get your tape pulled fast enough to make that work out. So
flake first is a home run, but only as long as you can get your tape up before your base flake.
So if you spray flake first, so you're doing, it's baseball size, so we're pretty small.
Yeah.
So I'm spraying flake first. I'm spraying my flake, and I'm putting 2 pieces of fine line tape, which is 1/2-inch fine line that I'm using, directly on top of each other, like perfectly. So I'll spray my flake, pull my fine line, spray my clear, pull my fine line.
Yeah.
And they're directly, it's the same line it's pulling.
Yep.
Then when you overlap with the solid color, I'm overlapping, say, 1/8 of an inch. And you can overlap 1/4 inch if you want.
Sure, because that's the first part that's going to get sanded off when you block it or DA it.
Right. So you have this overlap. The line doesn't look like it's right, but by the time you sand through that overlap, then the line's back where it's supposed to be.
You reveal the perfectly straight line underneath.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that's
it's a game. It's like the Rubik's Cube of refinishing right there, of how you want to do it, because it's a little bit different each time. And I've only done like the small, I just have done enough to know I don't know anything.
Right.
And it's just a tiny, tiny little bit.
In the mold, the best thing for them to do is what a lot of boat companies, the way they're getting as crisp lines as they are, is they're spraying the solid color first. They pull that out, then they spray the flake, and there's no tape lines to worry about. They don't have to pull a flake line in the mold.
That was like when we built that couple holes over at your shop.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
We did that same.
Speaking of that, how'd that turn out?
Not the greatest, I don't think.
Really?
Mm-mm.
You don't think it turned out the greatest?
Currently not, but we'll see.
Oh, really?
I mean, the boats we built were fine.
No, I mean that hole, the flake spray. That was our first encounter. Really,
oh, no.
Where we were like...
That boat that we did there?
Yeah.
No, that one came out really good.
Did it? Okay.
With everything that's happening over there other than that, that's a problem.
I felt like I was a help almost. I was like, I was trying to help.
Free help.
Yeah, I was like...
Because you had to get us out of your way.
I just remember like you started to try to shoot clear with that gun, and it shot a big stream.
Big old camper, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, did it? Yeah.
I wish that I could go into detail about that, but that particular
company,
person and setup is
endeavor.
Yeah, and that particular endeavor is probably best, unfortunately, left out of here.
Yeah. But that was our first.
That was how we met. I wish we could tell the story of how we met, but suffice to say that we are friends now.
Yeah. Oh, dude, it was bad. I felt bad about it because I remember you were like, I remember you telling me. So basically, Nick and John, they come in to the place I was working because the owner of where I worked was letting them do some work there. And
from a guy that we were doing some contract work for.
Yeah. And we just really didn't have the space, is really what it was. And I had a lot of work to do. And he was like, I remember one of the first things.
Logan very nicely just danced around is we got dropped on his doorstep like a flaming turd.
And he was, I remember you come up to me and you were like, man, what can we do? I don't want you to dread every time you see us. And I'm like, dude, we're already there.
That is exactly. I do. I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna like this guy because if nothing else, we can have a straight up conversation. Like, we can get through this.
I was like, but it's not your fault, and it wasn't your fault.
That's exactly what you said.
It was neither of our decisions.
Yep.
It's just one of them things.
We're both victims of circumstance.
I was honest, but I was like, I was just so frustrated. I was like, man, I can't believe we had all this stuff, and really, it was like mixing a repair shop and a fiberglass manufacturing shop together, and it's not one of the things that you do. They don't do it anywhere.
Nope. Well, it doesn't happen for a reason. The first time we poked our head in the door to go by, you weren't there. Shane was there. And as soon as I looked in, I turned around to John and I said, these guys are going to hate us.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like, we got to do everything we can to not be a pain because this is not a good situation for them. And if this was flipped around, I could very easily be the guy who's making things not any easier for these.
The chopper guns are going to hold those.
I mean, I can't even, you're probably still finding chop strands all over the place.
There's a little outline on the floor. There's evidence.
Yeah, there's. All right, you know what? I'm going to redirect this ship right back onto course.
Okay.
Bit. Man, I don't know if there's any coming back from that. And honestly, I think you pretty much walked us through. I mean, you tell me, what did we miss there? What else needs to be said?
Nothing on the 2-color with the solid. On the 2-color with the flake, I got a couple comments that I would say. So they're teaching at a class. I'm not naming the class.
Is it the class I think it is?
Yeah, I'm sure it is. They're teaching at a class out of state where the temperature is warmer. A gel coat class.
Does the name rhyme with spectrum?
Yeah, it rhymes exactly with that. So they're teaching down there, and really, the guy they got down there, I heard, is from up here. So, which is kind of funny. I don't know him, so I don't have any allegiance to anybody except for what's around and what ain't. But anyway, so the way they're teaching to do flake on flake is they're teaching to spray one color of flake and the clear, and then to tape up and spray the other color of flake and the clear, and they're leaving like a valley in between the two colors. So yeah, so it's buttoned up together, but where both colors end, there's no overlap, so they meet perfectly. Then in that valley, that would never work on a repair because
you'd have to fill that valley with clear, right?
Yeah, so that's what they're doing. They're filling the valley with clear. The reason they're doing it like that is because they're trying to match what comes out of a mold when you put flake on flake, which a lot of companies, if you really look around, a lot of companies are not doing flake on flake anymore.
Yeah.
Because the lines turn out awful.
Skeeter does it, and some of the color schemes they have on the walleye boats are so elaborate that you can't imagine it.
Yeah, and they're doing, so doing that, though, is kind of like the same process I'm spraying clear. They're doing kind of the same thing. And a bunch of companies are doing it the way I'm doing it, mixing the clear, all that stuff. When I do the flake on flake, I make the overlap, and I put my flake, and what that does, so I'll spray one color of flake and clear, and then I'll spray the other color flake, and then I'll overlap the clear over the first color that I sprayed.
But the flake gets butted on the hard line.
Yeah, and so I don't have this big dark valley where the line doesn't look crispy.
So why aren't they just teaching it that way?
I don't know.
Because that would save a step.
Well, yeah, it does, because they go and they sand it first and then respray clear over it again. So they're adding a lot of work, and the lines don't look good. So I don't know why or where that came from.
Interesting.
So it's pretty much the same thing as meeting the solid color for me. I'm doing one color of flake, and then I'm doing the clear and the flake on the same line, pulling that line. Second color of flake, I'm doing the flake, and I'm bringing the clear as the overlap.
And then knocking most of that back off.
Yeah, instead of the second color. And it makes the line nice.
That overlap, you have maybe 5% of it left when you're done.
Yeah, if any. So you can make it to where there's none.
All right, well, we've covered pretty well getting it down. I'm just kind of going off map here a little bit.
Go for it.
Blocker DA. I mean,
depends. Okay. So, here's what I got for you. If I can make my boat look better than what they're sending out at the factory with the DA, then I'll go with the DA.
Okay.
Because it saves time. But to technically do what's right and be a good little angel, you always want to block.
Okay.
So,
but there is, I will say, there's a lot of magic that happens in the buffing that you could almost buff away the difference. First of all, I think most people who have listened to most of these episodes know by now I'm a block guy. But I'm actually making an argument for the DA in this case, and that is because it's the clear coat especially, you're buffing the piss out of it. Yeah. And by the time you buff it, any of those DA marks that would be otherwise smoothed over by a slightly better blocking technique probably are left in the wash anyway by the end of the day.
Well, I'm going up to 1,500 with the DA.
Okay.
1,500 weight. It's 3M Trizact.
Yep.
Very expensive.
The foamies, there's like a little interface pad in itself.
I will say this too. I don't know what I'm doing. I wish I could tell you. What I'm DAing is not the same as what I see other people DAing. I don't know why it looks different. I can watch somebody else saying the exact same thing, and I'm not sure what they're doing that I'm not doing or what I'm doing that they're not doing. that makes the difference.
Okay.
But you about can't tell. I never get hit on from any of these manufacturers that I'm doing work for. They never ask me if I'm using a block or DA. So
fair enough.
And I'm using a DA.
Sure.
A lot of it.
Well, if you're doing a lot of work, you kind of have to, unless you're really doing really artisan.
And a lot of these boats, the way this stuff is, there's so much cure out in them.
What do you mean by cure out?
So the print,
okay.
The print from the curing process. So people think, they think a boat is like cured out the next day after they build it, but it's really, it cures out
for days.
I mean, maybe a year, a year, man. It depends on the environment. So if you build a boat here and it's indoors and it's kept in the shade at the dealership for 6 months, and then you take it out of here and you sold it to somebody in Georgia or 4 hours south of here, and it's out in the sun all the time, then the cure, whatever it didn't finish curing out here, it's going to finish down there. You'll get a lot of print, and it's almost like you could see the roller marks from them rolling the fiberglass.
Oh, really?
Through the gel coat. I could see vertical up and down lines.
That's pretty much what that's got to be.
And so when I'm DAing these things, it's cutting a lot of that out. And the way, I think there's something about the way I'm holding it or the pattern I'm sanding with. No, I do
like a crosshatch.
No, I don't do crosshatch. I do, so if it's on the side of the boat, I do like back to front. So horizontal. And I overlap. I keep it moving. I keep it flat. When I go to the next
sections?
Yeah. And when
4-foot sections or something?
Maybe like 2-foot sections even. Okay. And so when I go to the next section, though, I'm overlapping the section I just did like 4 or 5 inches.
Guide coat?
Depending on the color. If it's white, for sure, light colors. Some of the colors flake, it don't even show up in.
Clear, so a lot of time on clear and no guide coat?
A lot of times, no, yeah.
Okay. Well, in clear, you actually can get away with more than most people would think. I feel like if you have some heavier scratches here and there, you can buff them out more than you could in a solid color. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, it hides a lot more.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So, but if you were asking me what's the best way, what you should do, I would say the block.
Of course. I mean, everyone knows that, it was kind of a loaded question, but it really wasn't, because I wanted you to say that you can get good results with the DA if you do it right.
Yeah.
That's the huge caveat, is you can't just take the DA and be an animal. You have to care. Yeah. If you know how to use a block and you apply the, I know how to use a block mentality to the, I'm going to use a DA on this, but I'm still going to do it respectfully.
Yeah.
You can land in that middle ground that's perfectly fine for most stuff.
There's some things I've seen people, man, with air files.
I love those things.
I've seen them cut like lines, or they'll take the air file. And
you're talking about air file for finishing into clear?
Any spray. Any spray.
I like them for rough body work.
Yeah. And I've seen them like bury these air files underneath the rub rail.
Yep.
And run it
that edge.
Run it left and right. And they cut a line in the boat.
Yeah, 2.5 inches down on the bottom edge.
Yeah. And I'm like, why'd you even bring the air file out if that's what you're going to do?
Or at least run it like a diagonal down the boat, so you don't get that line. But
I do the X. I do the X on everything.
Yeah.
If I'm air filing, I do the X. If I'm blocking, I do the X. And that's keeping the block horizontal and pushing it in the shape of the X, but keeping the block.
And the same.
So if I turn the block, it's not the same as if I'm raking it with keeping the block horizontal, level.
Car Warriors. The other team was blockers. They spent so much time.
Oh, well, yeah. We did a reality TV show called Car Warriors, and the other team were some very, very good paint and body guys, I have to say. Like, there's no doubt that the quality of work that they were putting down on this 48-hour build was meticulous, but they kind of missed the point because it was a TV car and it didn't actually need to be that. And so they had like the most Gucci, you could inspect it in person and find hardly anything wrong with it, paint job, but their car wasn't running at the end. So you got to prioritize your time a little better than a 48-hour build.
Yeah.
Man, there was a whole bunch of them. Otherwise, I would shout out their shop. I don't think they're all together anymore. But that was a great experience, and it was funny because they made it seem like they wanted conflict. The producers were trying to stir the pot the whole time, but we were having so much fun with this other team the whole way through. That, it was hard for them to find any conflict to really put in the show.
Oh, really? That's funny.
But all right, well, can you think of anything else that we should get down on the record here? I have a feeling that you're going to be back because there's a lot more to say, and you live like 4 miles down the road.
Yeah.
But do you have anything else that you think needs to go down on the record right now?
Let's see. I don't know. There's it looks good. We've covered some.
I think we've covered enough that the average guy is definitely going to have something to chew on for a little bit here. And maybe we can get some follow-up questions from some people, and we could come back and address some more specific stuff, or we could, who knows what different roads we can go down.
Yeah, we've went long.
We went long.
It went fast. So,
yeah,
man.
Hour 23, that's what she said.
Yeah, except for your bathroom break.
Yeah, well,
that was at least 10 minutes. Did you put a timer on that?
We'll find it.
But yeah, I think that we really appreciate you coming. We appreciate you sharing a little bit of knowledge with us. It's a aspect of the industry that is often veiled in a lot of secrecy. So it's really cool to meet a guy who's willing to share and not be scared.
No, that's what I tell people. If they more power to whoever wants to try. Really, and the more you learn, the more you know in this life and stuff like that. But it's such a skilled thing that there's 90% of people I show, they don't get it.
Yeah.
And that's showing them right there with them, you know, but there could be somebody that you don't show that
they'll figure it out themselves eventually.
They have some knowledge of how things work and some experience in areas that they could probably get it. There's a guy actually recently come by and he was like, I'm going to respray all the flake on my boat trailer. And I'm like, well, here's what you do. And if you need any advice, I'm here for you. Just call, come down anytime you want. So we'll see how he goes on it. That'll be cool.
Trial by fire is the best way to do it. You just got to, this stuff, you got to jump straight into it, and you'll learn real quick once you're doing it.
Yeah. Just don't offer to do it for money until you know you can do it.
Correct. That's a mistake people make.
Yep.
Logan Sizemore with Top Notch Boat Repair. Thank you very much for joining us today. We appreciate your time, man.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us, everybody. And don't forget to go over to our Facebook group, Fiberglass and Composites, Tips and Tricks. Join the group and see what we've got going on over there. And come on back next week. Thank you.